Even Nancy would know that.
That's
So
right.
welcome everybody to our Zoom meeting. Delighted to have you all here. I am broadcasting live from Kansas City, Missouri. And wanted to let you all know that it is beautiful here. It is springtime in Kansas City. That's the view from our house, as Ron knows.
Nice.
That's the lake, and it's everything's in bloom, so it's just gorgeous here. And
Very pretty.
I want to see more pictures of Kansas and your surrounding areas.
well, unfortunately, I don't. But Mark Rogo has been asking in the previous meetings for me to have a tour of my wine cellar to everybody, and so I have a picture of it just to show you. There's the Bradford wine cellar.
Oh,
Partiers.
that's impressive.
Impressive.
And yep, it's not fully stocked, but we've been making good use of it during this pandemic, let me tell you.
Yeah,
And
we understand
restocking
why
it.
it's not stocked.
We've been buying more wine than we planned on, but every now and then I find somebody in the wine cellar who's trying to pilfer a bottle of wine, and this guy was caught in the act.
Oh.
He got a bottle of Moscato.
Red-handed too.
He's a man of
That's
good taste.
cute.
Kansas City.
So Chris, where are you buying from? Are you buying internationally or locally?
No, I buy it all over the country on the internet generally, and I buy some locally, but mostly I get it shipped to me though from the East Coast. That's where most of the Italian and French wine is from. So
You guys know alcohol consumption's an increased risk factor, don't you?
yeah, I do know that. Yeah. So anyway,
Hey, Kurt.
why don't we start with our Pledge of Allegiance by Jim Crane, or actually I see that Phil Gabriel is came on. So why don't we do with Phil? I think he was planning on doing it.
Okay, so if everyone wants to stand up, and there's a flag on your computer, and go ahead and start on 3. 1, 2, 3. I pledge allegiance
To the flag. States of America.
America.
The Republic stands
Nation.
nation
Under God.
under God, indivisible,
Liberty and justice for all.
All right.
I got kind of mixed up there. I heard so many different voices, I forgot where I was.
So
Anyhow,
Tom Barron, past President Tom Barron, do you have an invocation for us today?
I do. And, you know, COVID-19 is doing more than threatening our physical health. For many, it's affecting our mental and emotional health as well. So I searched for a word that might bring peace and understanding to those emotionally troubled by this pandemic. And that word is serenity, which led me to a prayer from Reinhold Neubauer. And it is, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardships as a pathway to peace, taking the sinful world as it is, not as I would have it, trusting that you will make all things right by surrender to your will, so that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with you forever in the next. Amen.
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 Amen. Thanks, Tom. That was nice. We'll admit one more person. I don't know who this is, but I'm going to admit him anyway. So I guess, do we have any guests of Rotarians today? I don't think we do. Or any visiting Rotarians? Or any Rotaractors on board? Any Rotaractors? That's what I miss. We used to have a lot of Rotaractors at our meetings. I don't think any of them have been on the Zoom calls, have they?
No, I don't think so.
We're not serving meals, that's why.
Have we been inviting them to our Zoom meetings?
Yes. Yes, Diane has been inviting them.
Oh, well, that's a shame that they're not coming on board. Okay, well.
Are classes in session?
No, I don't think so yet.
That may have something to do with it. I don't know.
They're on session online, so most of the students have gone home, unless they have an apartment. Most students have gone home Zoom.
But the ones still in LA are very active with Rotary District 5280. And so I don't think there's a reason some of them, including the current president, cannot be on our Zoom meetings.
All right. Well, how about announcements? Club and announcements. Diane has some announcements. Go ahead, Diane.
I do. I have several, actually. First of all, you all need to save the date. June 20th is going to be our non-demotion party. We're going to do a happy hour online, Zoom online, from 7 to 8:30. There's going to be some awards given and some prizes given.
Okay. Why? It's
You
good.
said you want
And so please mark your calendars, and I'll make an announcement next week to remind you to do so.
Oh, June what? June 30?
June 20th.
20th. Okay.
20th. The humanitarian trip next year is scheduled for April 17th to Costa Rica. They would like to know who would have an interest in attending if the trip goes. So I need to get kind of a little count, because they need to have some idea what to reserve in hotel rooms and that sort of thing. So keep that in mind. It's April 17th to the 21st. And then on April 22nd to the 26th will be the extended trip, if you want to do that as well. Excuse me. Another question I have for all of you is that we can now get Rotary masks, and the masks can have our logo on it, or the Rotary pin logo with our name, or Rotary International on it. If they're like around $5, are people interested in my ordering some?
What are they made out of? Are they are they cotton or fabric, or are they the paper ones, or?
No, I think they're cotton.
They're cotton?
Yes, I believe they're cotton.
You can reuse them?
So, well, keep it in mind. If you're interested, send me a quick email.
Okay.
The same is true of t-shirts. We want to order some t-shirts with our logo on it, so that when we do volunteer activities, even if it's just delivering food, we can get pictures that show that we are Rotarians in action. So if you want a t-shirt, I not only need to know how many, but what size. Finally, I attended the Pageant of the Arts ceremony last night. Sadly, none of our contestants won or placed. They got honorary mention. Anyway, they did show all of the winners' presentations, because they were all done on Zoom, and they were really quite fantastic. Just kind of unbelievable. So they're up now on YouTube if anybody wants to go see them. And that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Diane,
right.
did you actually go in person to the Arts Awards?
No, it was on Zoom.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and as Diane says, it's still available.
And it's worth seeing. These kids
Absolutely.
were quite talented that won. Quite talented. Back to you, Chris.
Hi,
Thanks.
Chris.
Any other announcements from anybody about club or Rotary items?
I want to bring up, Chris, this is Ed Jackson.
Hi, Ed.
Doing okay? Hi. So I got knocked off 21 times from my Zoom meeting, and I found out why. 5 houses down the road is the headquarters of the executive Amazon video team. And even though I was told they have their own network, I found out what they really have is most of the bandwidth of their own network. So what happened, I ended up doing, getting a 5G from AT&T, which is the worst in my opinion. And so last week I didn't get knocked off at all. But this week I even have another provider, and it's even faster, and I'm online. But it was, I've never had that experience in my life. And now that everyone's moving to Culver City, all the big media players, we see where what AT&T and other companies are going to make sure who gets the service. So anyway, that's just a point of order.
Well, glad you're online and and you're there and you're doing well, Ed.
Yeah.
How's the missus doing?
She's as long as she can tolerate looking at my face every day, I guess she's okay.
So Chris,
I sympathize with her, Ed.
I get, I understand, and so do I.
So, Chris, two more things I forgot.
Yeah.
First of all, the happy hour on June 20th will be from 7 to 8:30. And secondly, Nancy and I heard from Mark Rogo this week, and apparently his mother's cancer has returned. And so Mark went up to see her, which is why he's not Zooming with us today, because he's driving back. But we should all just keep her in our prayers. Okay, thank you.
All right. Well, thanks for that. Sorry to hear it.
I have a question for Diane for the group. Diane, do we have any meetings after the 6th of June?
Oh yeah, we're going right through June till the very end.
So the 14th, then we got the 20th, the party, and then the 27th, right?
Well, I think if Brian is on, I think he's got speakers for every Thursday in June.
Oh, okay.
No, I've got one speaker that I'm trying to get him to narrow to the one of the last 2 dates. So I've got one opening. I just can't tell you which date that is.
So if we decide that we want to go dark on one of those Thursdays and just use the party as our quote meeting, is that what you're kind of hinting at, Dwight?
Well, yeah, that would be the 18th meeting. So are we going to actually meet on the 11th and on the 25th, or what's the deal?
Well, again, I think it's up to Brian, but Brian, it sounds like maybe you only need to get one more speaker for one of those dates.
Right. I've got Eugene Volek coming back to talk about constitutional issues brought up with the COVID virus. And he's either going to speak to us on the 18th or the 25th.
Okay.
So,
Brian, I've got this one woman I was in contact with today, Diane she's with STEM, and I know they are anxious to speak because I said we can't have her until October, and they went, ooh. So if you need a speaker, I think we could probably get one from that organization.
okay. Well, it sounds like if we go with Dwight, do you care which date we go dark? Either the 18th or the 25th of June?
Well, it's not up to me. I was just wondering, so we have windmill scribes, that's all.
Okay. All right.
Brian, I have a question for you. This is Philip. The gentleman came and talked about Constitution. He's not a constitutional lawyer, is he? He's just a business lawyer, right?
No, one of his expertise is, you were talking about Eugene?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's one of his expertise.
He's got tremendous.
I felt like some of his comments last time were really biased in one direction and maybe not very accurate in terms of the actual Constitution. So is there a way we can get somebody?
I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't agree because my best buddy, who's also in that same field and teaches at ASU, they know each other well. And so he does know what he's talking about, and that is one of
I'd beg to differ. I would love to see a constitutional lawyer.
Where did you get your law degree from, my friend? Anyway.
Okay, so enough. You guys can talk about this offline. All right, it's up to Brian. He's getting the speakers. All right, we're not here to fight today.
Okay,
we're not fighting. I just want to make sure it's clear.
At least not as a group.
Also, just as an FYI, Tom, offline, we'll have a conversation because I think you may have a date or two open after a conversation I had with Nancy and Mark about your schedule.
Okay.
Diane, this is Diane, and
Yes.
Chris is Steve Day. Just to remind everyone, we do have past presidents signed up to preside over the 4 meetings in June. So if one meeting is dropped off, that's fine. But on June 4th, it's Marcia. June 11th and the 18th, it's at Jackson. And on June 25th, Diane, it's kind of like your final meeting. So if I put my 2 cents in, I would say we go dark. If we do go dark, we would go dark on the 18th. So Diane can have that last meeting. Or the 20th could function for that too, I suppose. So anyway, those are the people who are signed up over the next 4 weeks.
Thank you, Steve.
All right, guys. Well, appreciate all the info. I know we've been doing some good news stuff, and I'd really like to hear some good news from some people. Every time I open the newspaper, all it is a bunch of COVID this and COVID that, and I'm really getting sick and tired of all this. I bet you all are. So, can anybody tell me some good news that's going on in their lives right now?
Yeah, I think you should all turn into SGN. It's Some Good News by Jonathan Krasinski.
Yes, I love that.
And if anybody has seen it, it's absolutely wonderful, extraordinary. He does a 15-minute segment, and he's done it for 8 weeks in a row. And boy, it's not political, and it's only offering good news. And some of the people that appear on that will stun you, and you can get it on YouTube. So I would highly recommend SGN, Some Good News, with Jonathan Krasinski.
You know, from The Office.
Yeah.
And Jack Ryan.
And Jack Ryan.
Yeah, yeah,
And
it's really
And
good.
who is he married to? Emily Blunt.
Blunt, yes. And
How
did you-
about from our
Yeah.
from our group? Anybody got good news to share?
Yeah, I haven't had a haircut since January, and I never thought I'd get used to working at home. I don't miss the commute at all, and my wife is still speaking to me after all these close encounters, all these months. So
That's important.
yeah, it is. I'm very happy working out of the house.
Christine.
Yeah. What other good news, guys? Anybody else?
I've got 2 grandsons who I sent a copy of this to Diane, but they completed during this isolation an 18,000 puzzle, a regular puzzle.
Oh my God.
Really?
It extends at least 9 feet across and about 10 feet high, 18,000 pieces, and they did this in about 1 month. And they're still going to school.
How old are they? Am I muted? How old are they, Tom?
12 and 16.
Well, that's the Playboy puzzle, right, Tom?
No. Fully approved by my daughter.
For my wife.
Oh boy. So, anybody else before we move on?
I've got a grandson. Our youngest is 6 months old. He's a few days away from his first step. Not quite there, 6 months. Unbelievable.
Oh, that's exciting.
All right.
Yeah, it is. We're watching him all the time.
All right, guys. Well, just to keep it interesting, I put together a little Rotary quiz so people won't doze off, so we can get their attention here before our speaker comes on. So let's move forward with the Rotary quiz. What do you say?
Right.
Okay.
So let's see here. First question. Where was the first non-English speaking Rotary Club? Anybody have any ideas?
Tokyo.
Mexico City.
Well, you guys are cold and hot. Anybody else?
Brooklyn.
Brooklyn.
I was going to say London, but I.
Well, the answer is Rotary Club of Havana, Cuba.
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
1916. It was the first non-English speaking chartered club. It met, as you can see there, at the Hotel Nacional de Cuba. And I went there a few years ago, and I just wanted to share a couple pictures of it with you. That's the front of the hotel. It was built by the same architect as who built the breakers in Palm Beach, Florida. That's why the resemblance. And this is a close-up of the front of the hotel where you can see the name above the door.
Are Rotary clubs allowed in Cuba, Chris?
Not now. They haven't been since the revolution. So, question number 2. On which continent are the highest number of Rotary members?
Whoa.
Asia.
Asia.
North America.
Yeah, I'd say North America.
Yeah, any others?
Asia.
Guesses?
Europe. Europe.
Europe?
Africa.
Okay, close. The answer to this, according to Rotary International, is Asia. 387,663 members at last count. And just to give you an idea about where Rotary members are, that's where they are.
Mhm.
This is published, it's all on the Rotary International website.
How about there's an asterisk?
I don't know what the asterisks for. That I just copied the page from the website. So, last question. Too bad Mark Rogo isn't here. He might know the answer to this. How much did the Rotary Foundation award in grants during fiscal year 2018? Any guesses?
$1 million.
$200 million. $200 million.
50 million.
100 million.
25 million.
Well,
Not a clue.
I was going to say your numbers are all over the place. The answer is a little over $86 million, and there's the breakdown.
Wow, that's
of all the
impressive.
grants. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Yes.
And again, that's also on the Rotary International website. Just a tremendous amount of information on that.
Mhm.
Is that red mostly polio, do you suppose?
Couldn't tell you. I doubt that it's all, but it might be primarily though. Although polio has been pretty much taken care of, there's a lot of other diseases I'm sure they're working on.
How about
So, Brian, are you ready to introduce our speaker? Is our speaker on board? I think he may be.
I can't see though. Hang on. And Chris, yes, he is. And Chris, can you release the
Yeah, let me show you who our speaker is first.
Oh, nice.
Fancy.
That's great.
And I believe, according to Brian, he's going to be talking about the future of telemedicine. So I will release my screen at this point.
Do you want
figure out how to do
mute
it?
everybody?
I will introduce. So the topic today is the future of telemedicine. And COVID-19 has impacted our lives in so many ways. And so many of these ways will be lasting. Online education, online commerce, online grocery shopping, online entertainment, and then also online or telemedicine, which is a topic that we're going to talk about today. And I read a statistic from Bank of America. I'm doing this from memory, but I think I got the stats right. They indicated that at the end of 2019, household internet penetration was 17%. And then by the end of April of 2020, 4 months later, household internet penetration went up to 20%. 4 months, it went up to 28%. And to put that in perspective, that the internet has grown more in the last 4 months than it has in the previous. From Google Chrome. It's fantastic. So I have the pleasure of introducing my friend, Dr. Behzad Emad. He's a medical doctor who focused on disorders of muscles, bones, and nervous system, with emphasis on restoration of function and pain management. Dr. Emad is on the leading edge of telemedicine because some years ago, he sold his practice and then founded Avicina Medical Solutions. He does telemedicine exclusively now. And Behzad, thank you for joining us. Please tell us about what the future holds for us.
All right. Thank you so much, Brian, for the introduction. Also, thank you so much for inviting me, and I appreciate your attention. I know we are all busy, although not as busy as before, but yes, let me share the screen already. Yes?
Yeah. Yeah, I've released it, so you can, if you can put it on yours to share, that'd be great.
Oh.
No, I was just, okay, so, and I think we had talked about this a week or so ago.
I think it still says
you got kids.
I think somebody needs to mute. Michael, can you mute your microphone?
We don't know anything about the kids yet or anything, so I think we decided we'd wait to see where it's like.
The host needs to mute the line.
Right now, if he died, it would just all go to your sister. And then, both of them are gone.
Chris Bradford, can you mute everyone?
And I just write in it that, like we discussed.
And then Emad, you can unmute yourself and we'll be good to go.
Okay, but I'm not able to share my screen. It says host disabled participant screen sharing.
We can hear you and see you.
Chris, can you, or who's in charge of this? I guess Marcia. Marcia, can you set it up so somebody other than the host can share content?
Yeah, well, actually, Chris, this is off of Chris's internet. And so
okay.
To do that, let me see if I can do anything. No, I can't do anything.
Okay. Oh, I'm so sorry, Behzad. Can you begin and we'll work on this?
Sure. Let me see. Okay, can you guys see me well?
Yes.
All right. So I just have to, as a physician, when we give a lecture, need to disclose a few things. I do not have a sponsor. And as Brian mentioned, I have ownership in a couple of medical corporations. The topic of future telemedicine is very broad, so it's going to be challenging to just limit it to only 20 or 30 minutes. And also the title that I chose was Future of Telemedicine. And as I was preparing the lecture, I figured probably the better title would have been Telemedicine Post-COVID-19, the Grand Healthcare Experiment. So
you should be able to share your screen at this point.
Yeah.
Give it a try, yeah, because I set it up best I could. There you go.
Is this good?
Yes, we can see.
Okay, perfect.
Chris, did you hit the record button?
Yes, it's recording.
Yes, I do have it recording, Allie.
Okay, so again, the better title would have been Telemedicine Post-COVID-19 because it was so profound what it did to this field, as Brian also mentioned. So it affected many electronic industries. And of course, telemedicine, once a hard sell, can't keep up with the demand. This was from the This is from the Wall Street Journal. It was in April 1st. And as far as me giving you information, you probably know so much about it and you have experienced it already. So you know all the what has happened so far. So because of that, I'm going to emphasize more on why and how. 1 second. Hey, Roy.
Yeah.
Go to full screen. Sorry, I'm going to get my son to help a little bit. Full screen.
Full screen.
Lost the full screen.
Just stay like this, it's fine.
Okay. So, so before we get started, I have a question. I have a quiz. I sort of overheard you guys doing quizzes, and I wanted to know if anybody knows what these are. Anybody? Okay, it's okay because I'm gonna go over what this is. This is the keel of a sailboat, a 37-foot sailboat that was found in Point Dume, California. I was walking with my family there. And this is probably on the right is either the gas tank or water tank. So that's the what. And I'm gonna go over how and why towards the end. We're going to talk about some terminology, history, past, current, and future. So what is telemedicine? Essentially, telemedicine is when a medical provider connects with the patient via telecommunication. And the purpose is for diagnosing and treatment. There's a difference between telemedicine and telehealth. Essentially, telemedicine is the medical part, the clinical part, what I do with my patients. And I guess talking about telemedicine to non-medicals, like this lecture perhaps, would be a part of telehealth. And then there are a couple terminologies about where people are. One is the originating site. Originating site is where the patient is. And the remote site is where the medical provider is. As far as documentation, out of these two, the most important thing is really the originating site because we are obligated to document specifically where the patient is because it also has to do with the laws and our licenses and so forth. Plus, we have to disclose where we are. So a couple of terminology. One is in-person versus face-to-face. Long ago, Medicare, which is the gold standard, CMS, of medical rules and regulation that everybody later adopts, made a distinction. Essentially, really it started with telemedicine because from the billing point, face-to-face always meant face-to-face, the way it sounds like. And because telemedicine came along, I was one of the people who helped out, we pretty much established that telemedicine is also a face-to-face. Therefore, it has to be reimbursed and be treated the same way. So what are we going to call the one that you actually touch the patient? We call that in-person. So face-to-face includes in-person and via internet. In-person is just in-person. You have to touch the patient. And virtual visit, I would like, please do not use because it makes it unreal and unimportant. So there are different types of telemedicine. One is essentially live, like now, if I were talking to you guys. One is store and forward. Essentially, this is probably much older because, for example, when you go get an MRI, the technician stores the image, forwards it to the radiologist, radiology reads it. So it's not really live. What we're doing now is live. It's also called synchronous versus asynchronous. Currently, the one that is officially reimbursable is the live one. Then there's, of course, audio versus audio visual. Again, I'm going to go over this. In the past, it was really limited to audio visual. Now, Medicare, again, gold standard, are allowing for doctors to call patients and call that an actual telemedicine. And then there are other things like it's called remote monitoring, which is essentially comes down to observing the patient from a distance, like monitoring their blood pressure, weight, all the vital signs, and then patient engagement, which is mainly about the wearables and what it does to their health. If you ask me, and now and even 5 years ago, I could tell you, every specialty can use telemedicine. And I've always tried to encourage my friends, but they did have a opinion of their own and they didn't really agree with me. They thought I'm crazy. Maybe they like driving to mid-Wilshire a lot, or I don't know. But it's a habit, it's a human issue, it's a human factor. As far as the technology, it's really, really simple. And I've always told my colleagues, you just need power source. It's important to mention that because I see my patients in different places, on a boat, in Rome, in our home, vacation home. So I'm always thinking about the power source. And people now appreciate it more. You gotta have electricity. And then hardware, of course, computer, microphone, speaker, camera versus smartphone. Software is the video conferencing platform, electronic medical record, email, and text. Again, these are all have to be encrypted and HIPAA compliant, which means that I use the same Zoom, and I've been using it for many years, except that I pay $200 per month because I have a associate agreement that they're taking responsibility for the data for. Then we need internet connection, of course, Ethernet via wire or Wi-Fi, and we also could use Bluetooth. And then there are peripherals, holograms, artificial intelligence, robots. These are the fancy things we're going to go over a little more. Again, if I was to give this talk, probably even 6 months ago, I would have probably had to spend so much time on this one slide because many people would just, they couldn't fathom it. They weren't used to it. Now, you saved me a lot of time. And so we can learn more newer things. Then also, as far as the policies and privacy, there were these parity issues where it took us a long time for to make telemedicine be acceptable for different states. So some states were slower, some states were much quicker. California was actually pretty progressive, as we always are. And believe it or not, even Alabama was progressive. I was very surprised because I have family there. I think more rural the places are, they would be more open to this technology. Again, I'm trying to simplify it. That's all you needed. The computer, internet, and so forth. And it's just people didn't realize how simple it is. Again, HIPAA is very important in medicine, as you all know. It's your data. We can't share it with other people without your consent. Then there's a consent. There's been a specific consent form that I've had my patients to sign. One is my general one, and now I've been putting another paper in front of my patients, or digitally, to consent to video conferencing. And also verbally, I've always had to ask them verbally, do you agree to this? Can you see me? Can you hear me? And so forth. Then the liability insurance. Again, I gave up my in-person liability insurance in 2014. And I purchased a telemedicine insurance, which is less expensive. but it was a specific one. First, I went to my own liability insurance company. They just didn't have such thing. But now I'm sure they're all probably including telemedicine in their coverage. Then also licensing cross states. Unfortunately, to this state, there's an issue. It's somewhat political because I, as a California licensed physician, have not been able to see a patient in Georgia forever. But lately, they have loosened that. Some states have these alliances together. And if your state is part of that, you automatically, it's kind of being part of the Euro system. You automatically get plugged into all of them. Actually, California doesn't belong to that. So I'm kind of stuck with this one state, but it keeps me plenty busy. And then reimbursements, I mentioned, there's been a major issue. They didn't consider it legitimate. Then they decide it is face-to-face. And then it's been always reimbursed for the past many years, just the same way as the regular visits. So I would like to say all these good things about telemedicine, but this is inside information I'm sharing. There are a lot of pitfalls, concerns, and challenges, no matter what the salesperson to the software till the doctor, because I've been doing both for many years. First of all, there's always been the issue of laying of hands, which fortunately, suddenly COVID-19 really took care of that. People didn't want not to be touched. Now, good luck touching a patient. So the other one is the technology. Technology also took care of itself, and we're just progressing so much better. Physical examination is significantly limited. I won't go into that more detail. Data acquisition is an issue because we need to be able to take your blood pressure, and I also have solutions for that. And then overutilization of diagnostic tests. I admit, if I see a patient and I don't have records previously from the referring doctor, if I don't have the lumbar spine MRI, I tend to order a whole bunch of things because I'm kind of like, I don't have enough information. Out of not knowing, I have to not just cover myself with the liability, but get a lot more information to make up for the lack of touching. And I think that's an issue. It doesn't come up a lot, but we will see overutilization of diagnostic tests. Now, of course, touch and smell. That's a very interesting one. I like to travel. I watch a lot of travel videos. And I was talking to my wife, the only thing we can really feel, because there's so many of them now, with the drone on the ground, is the smell. Smell was probably the most profound thing. If you're like in Amalfi Coast, how did the lemon trees smell? And of course, touch, which is more obvious. Again, dependence on electricity. I actually plan to get myself solar panel and Tesla batteries because I like to be more independent from the grid. Interoperability. I don't want to give investment advice because I'm definitely not financially savvy, but look at all these electronic medical records that they were hot at one point. They still are, except that they don't talk to each other. By default, by the nature of business, Epic is one of the major ones that actually took over Cedars-Sinai, UCLA, and many other ones. Now it's less of a problem, but it's still a huge problem. They need to talk to each other. Of course, you can do procedures, which we have some to say about that. Cybersecurity is a major issue. And even now is somewhat device-centered. There's too much attention to the device, only because we're a little still new to this. Ideally, at one point, you will be like driving a car. You don't pay too much attention to the steering wheel. You actually want to pay attention not to the object, but to actually the activity, which is turning to the right. I guess it was so important, I repeated it. So the interoperability. Then again, the physical exam, I do a lot of legal cases with qualified medical evaluations, and we have to always disclose this and that. I had to recently add this to my report, and because you have to disclose what's missing from your usual exam. Essentially, the range of motion cannot be measured. I can eyeball it, but we have had this problem with Department of Workers' Compensation. I've been advising them on this, and they wanted us to determine disability. And I know, doing all this for many years, 4 degrees of reduction in the range of motion can suddenly turn into 1-2% disability. So it's a major limitation. Sometimes I've been asking the patient to self-test strength, sensory, or like I ask him to pick up a bucket of milk, 5 pounds if they can do it. You cannot palpate for spasms, tenderness. Measurements, it's much easier now. I just ask their wife or whoever is with them to take measurements. And certain things are just not possible. Vital signs, there are solutions to that. This JMAR test, which is the squeezing of the making grips. Reflexes and some orthopedic tests are just not possible. So another quiz is, does anyone know what view is this and where it is? Okay, you can't talk. I know, I don't hear you. So anyways, this is mooring A1 in Emerald Bay. The boat is facing actually towards Santa Monica Bay, and these are the Indian rocks that you always want to avoid. You have to go around these buoys. And this is the view in the back, because it's probably one of the best moorings in the entire island, because Emerald Bay is so quiet. So as far as you guys all know, Bill Baxter, Dr. Bill Baxter, the frontier doctor, and I just wanted to play a little thing on that because it really represents a lot of things, and I'm going to go over that. Can you guys hear this?
No, we can't hear it.
Oh, oh, we cannot hear it. Let's see. Well, Roy, any solutions?
Can you try it again? Everybody may need to turn on a microphone on their own computers. Try it one more time.
No. But it's okay. So we are. That's good. So that was Rex Allen. If you didn't hear it, I'm sorry about that. And he travels a lot. People keep coming to him, and you got to go to the next town. He gets on his carriage and goes full gallop to get to places. And I wonder if, going over the history of telemedicine, what if he had received the telegram, and they probably did, that they need his help. And what if instead of galloping to the location, he had simply taken some history that he's been given and given some advice. If he was a specialist, what if he could have actually guided the local primary care doctor, the other local doctor? So the possibilities are endless. And Bill Baxter, Dr. Baxter could have really benefited today, would probably save a lot of horsepower. So I think I'm just going to go quickly as far as the history of telemedicine, go over some of the sort of personal journeys I've had. I was 16 years old in Istanbul, Turkey, alone, and I would need money from US and Iran to be sent to me. But I had to wait for the mail to open for me and get the traveler's check out. But one time, and it was always DHL. I knew that word DHL before anything. And one time, they actually wired me money. And that was one of those light bulb moments, because I think we get interested in things when they come from a specific need, just like COVID-19. I'm like, how did the money travel? So that was one of those light bulb moments. And then again, in college, some of the highlights of my exposure. In college, they had this one computer in the student union that people lined up to go and send emails. I don't know what they called it then. So fast forward, this was my computer, which was essentially a calculator. And so I went to Brooklyn to medical school, and we had to buy this set. Now I think Amazon sells it for $59. Moving forward in internship, we had these pagers. My first pager was voice only. And if you miss that 15-second, whatever they said, then you would miss it. Then, thank God, we had these digital ones. And then finally, we had electronic records in a very primitive way that we could actually see the lab results on the computer and radiology reports, no images yet. So I got my first cell phone in '96, but it was in West LA VA, which was one of the pioneers in really telemedicine. They don't talk about it much, but I don't know why. They had electronic medical record many, many years ago. But it started with this. We had to take calls from home, and somehow they allowed us to remotely access the data. And this was a revolution. I didn't have to go in. I lived in Brentwood, was West LA VA. I still didn't have to go in because I would just ask the nurse to do things remotely, and I could see the actual data myself. But another light bulb moments was that, listen, we got anything that's digitized now is transferable electronically. So all these light bulbs go into my head, including ICUs. If you look at this picture to the right, all these gadgets, anything as soon as it becomes electronic, it can be seen anywhere. In fact, inside information, the ICU patients that are barely touched. Essentially, the nurse has multiple screens and gadgets that they look up, and the doctor's the same. There's really nothing to examine. Maybe their lungs, barely. So moving forward, did home banking in year 2000, Bank of America. Moving on, I got my own electronic records. Then I discovered the concept of remote staffing, which was huge. I just had my phones transferred to Philippines. Then finally, I sold and started telemedicine myself. So right now, as business owners or people we all have tasks. And we need to manage our multiple tasks. We need to know first, is it necessary? Yes. Can someone else do it cheaper, better, and faster? No. Now you're stuck with the task. Now, can it be done remotely? This has been the question that's been going on lately, which is very important. Again, we use technology for entertainment, productivity, communication, and this boy, his first snowman was on this iPhone and is trying to impress his mom. And that's the future. This is my son's birthday party inside this, I guess they call it game trucks. And he's from Generation Z. They do a lot of Zs, and they may not enjoy the scenery, but they lay down and watch their, in fact, lately, that's the only way to get him on outside. So there's all these indications that where we're going with this. And so I'll just quickly go over a few things. I mentioned there are so many limitations in data gathering. It's important. And so we have these kits. that military, paramedics, in space, they can use this, satellite offices, home and work. So these essentially are the same thing we use in the office, stethoscope, and all kinds of other devices that are electronic, and the doctor can hear it on the other end. All you need is almost a non-trained person to apply these. And this is going to be the future. Every person is going to have one of these kits, maybe even fancier, but a lot cheaper. You don't have to spend because now it's not affordable for every household. So again, these are all the vital signs you can monitor remotely. These are all the gadgets, breathalyzer, and also wearables. We've had that for a long time.
Behzad, time is short, and I wanted to allow some time for questions.
Oh, okay. I'm going to be quicker. Okay. So these are the kit. I'm not going to give you any medical advice or business advice, obviously, but I have one advice. Get yourself a home vital sign acquisition, data acquisition. It's just a blood pressure cuff, because this home exams and telemedicine is going to stay. There's going to be this finger stick test, all these blood tests that are going to be done at home, very near future. And all you get, and then you simply mail the sample with 1 drop of blood. It's huge. And then urine testing as well. So now, again, a quick on holograms. We know from Princess Leia, that was the first time, but that is going to be another thing that's becoming very ordinary.
Wow.
This is the world's smallest display. This is like a contact lens, and it's not even the contact lens, it's the one in the center that's the display. It's just as big as your pupil. That's where we're going. Holograms are being used already, not in, probably in experimental universities. So this doctor is actually seen at the 3D CT, they make it colored and everything. And of course, other topics are artificial intelligence. They're trying to figure out how the computer could possibly read x-rays better than doctors. They kind of have put that on hold. They have decided that we better apply these more on statistics and logistics of hospitals, because there's so much going on in telemedicine, they can't focus on that yet. But I admit that one day you don't really need doctors too much. I mean, the computer should be easily able to do a differential diagnosis, at least, if not treat you. Then with robotics, this is a maternity ward for real, and has had a bad PR, but they're gonna have to make it more gentle, and more acceptable and more sensitive. And they will have more emotional intelligence, just like us, probably better than some of the human that we meet. This is, as you probably all heard of, the Da Vinci robotic surgery. This is really, one day, this is even going to be elementary, because this is not autonomous robotic surgery. This is assisted surgery. You can't do it without a doctor. It's just, the electronics says where this thing to move around. But one day we will see our autonomous robotic surgeries. This is the Buoy 2ES, Santa Monica Bay. And quickly, I'll go over telemedicine and COVID-19. I mentioned this should have probably been the topic, because there's been such a radical difference. We were in such a slow elementary stage before, only 6 months ago, and just things have unleashed. It's almost as significant as a home computer when you go across. Now, pre-COVID-19, this is what I had to deal with. Human factors. Nobody wanted to do it. My doctor friends or patients were reluctant. So, but things changed. There were so many indications of how important it is, was completely underutilized. Only 2% of employees used it. Look at how much the system could have saved. And even then, it was 79% satisfaction. So again, some things are habit. You cannot break unless you have to. In a time of a war, in a time of a pandemic, it pushes people beyond their imagination. Again, these doctor offices with all these employees and quick visits and so forth, there's been a lot of problem in healthcare system. More problems that, for example, mental health wasn't available in many rural areas. And 53% left their scheduled appointment because there was so much wait. So, during, here's probably the punchline: the essentials versus non-essentials. Everybody wants to know if their business is essential or not. And it fast-forwarded the whole thing. The policymakers at the federal level, they loosened up the laws for telemedicine. I don't want to get into too much detail. They removed a lot of the requirements, including
Behzad, can we go to questions? Our meeting is officially over.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Would that be okay?
Yes, we're done.
All right.
Doctor, I have one quick question for you.
Sure.
What do you say to people like me who, honestly, if I never had to do another Zoom meeting as long as I lived, it'd be too soon, but I guess I have to do it for now. But I much rather be in person with my doctor, and I don't like Zoom. I don't like teleconferencing and stuff like that. So what do you say to people like that?
Well, it's really a personal choice. And I think it will always be a personal choice. It won't be obviously mandated, except now it's the matter of life and death. I agree. Some people just don't like the video chatting. I think the new generation doesn't mind it. My patients who had to travel far, they prefer it. And one of the most important things is actually the elderly. Elderly were one of my limitations because they had a hard time with technology. But now the statistics show they love it and they get on and they do just fine. So that's one of the obstacles. But again, and also the peripherals I mentioned, the holograms, you may actually feel differently about it. But no, it's never, we're human. Gotta smell.
Thank you.
So.
May I ask a question?
Sure, please.
With people starting to go back to work, I work in television, and they said that on the outside of a sound stage or where we're going to film, we have to have a tent and take everybody's temperature before they can go inside. And also, so they're even kicking around, we may have to do one of those 15-minute COVID tests to see if they have the disease and are just asymptomatic or something. And is there a way that we're going to be able to do that with telemedicine? Like if you're on the other line and they, put their finger in a machine or, you hold up a device like we're going to take their temperature? Or is there a plan for that?
First of all, I want to say that I'm not a COVID specialist doctor and you've had a lecture on that, but I'll give you the technology aspect. No, the only thing you can, I mentioned the thermometer can be digitally transported, like the information the doctor can see or whoever on the other end. But the test technically could be mailed to you and sent back, but in your case, they're looking for a quick screening to let you in. So no, that's the limitation, I would say.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions for our distinguished speaker?
Maybe just a quick one in clarification. You mentioned telemedicine insurance. Is it more or less expensive? I didn't quite get the difference between the coverage that you get from a carrier. Is it more or less?
Right now, almost over 90% cover it, and it's the same reimbursement as regular visit because it's considered face-to-face. The telephone calls are different. The telephone calls were actually Medicare didn't even allow them now to be reimbursed, but now they are reimbursing, and they kept increasing the reimbursement because it's really your time being spent.
Yes. And the insurance cost, is it the same having a license for a clinic versus on telemedicine?
Yes, it is. It's the same reimbursement. Yes.
Thank you.
That may change. I'm not, but probably will change.
And Chris, you see in the chat, Kurt had a question.
Oh, I can't see it. What's the question?
If it's possible for us to use your look at your PowerPoint, just read through it and everything, is it possible for us to have a copy of it or something?
Sure, no problem.
Thank you.
Sure.
Behzad, I have a question. You pointed out a lot of the challenges. I would guess some areas of medicine are better suited for telemedicine than others. Where do you think you're going to see the most growth, in what area of medicine?
Well, as far as, I guess I can just go over what I think about probably psychology. I think the mental health is the new pandemic. It already has started. The rate of suicide, depression, anxiety, PTSD. So that's a big one. Obviously, you don't need to really touch the patient. It's always been dermatology. Radiology was one of the ones, pathology, which is essentially lab work. And then it will just, as we advance in data gathering tools, more and more specialties. But procedures, no. But that's a nice thing. This pandemic really made people think what's really necessary. In fact, that's why it is a grand healthcare experiment. Do we really need every 90 days a blood test? Do we need an annual wellness? This was pushed for the purpose of preventive medicine to prevent issues, but do we really need them? We don't know yet. That's why there's a lot of scrutiny on much of healthcare activities.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right, guys, we probably ought to wrap it up so everybody can get on with their days. We very much appreciate you taking the time to speak with us, Doctor.
Thank you.
It was very informative, and it'd be great if you could make your PowerPoint presentation available to us.
Sure.
We can spend some more time on it. Anyway, I think we're going to wrap it up here. So thank you all for attending today's meeting. And we will see you all next week with our next Zoom meeting. All right. So everybody take care. Have a safe week and a good weekend.